Take a deep breath. Let the day fade away. There is nowhere you need to be, and nothing you need to do, except listen. Tonight's story takes place in a quiet American town, the kind where streetlights glow softly and memories live in the walls of old houses. At the far end of Maple Street stood a small white house. It wasn't the biggest house on the block. It wasn't the newest either. But every night, without fail, a warm yellow light shone from its front window. Neighbors noticed it. Some wondered about it. Others simply found comfort in knowing it was there. That house belonged to Thomas Whitaker. Thomas was 72 years old, a retired high school history teacher, widowed for nearly a decade. He had lived in that house for 45 years. Every floorboard creaked with familiarity. Every wall held a memory. Thomas woke each morning before sunrise, not because he had to, but because his body remembered routine. He brewed his coffee the old way, a drip machine that hummed like a quiet companion. He sat at the kitchen table, the same one where his children once spilled cereal, where his wife once laughed while reading the paper. He read slowly now, not because he couldn't read faster, but because he liked letting words settle. Time moved differently at this stage of life. Maple Street had changed. New families moved in. Children rode scooters instead of bicycles. Phones replaced front porch conversations. But Thomas didn't resent it. He believed every generation carried its own rhythm, and his rhythm was gentle. Every evening, just before dusk, Thomas performed the same quiet ritual. He turned on the lamp in the front room, the one with the beige shade, the one his wife Eleanor had chosen years ago. He didn't need the light yet, the sun still lingered, but he turned it on anyway, because Eleanor once said, "Someone might need to see it." Thomas never fully understood what she meant, but after she passed, he kept the tradition alive. And so, night after night, the light in the last house on Maple Street glowed. One autumn evening, as leaves whispered along the sidewalk, Thomas noticed a young woman standing across the street. She looked tired, not physically, but emotionally. She stared at the glowing window for a long moment. Then she waved. Thomas hesitated, then waved back. That small gesture felt larger than it was. The next evening she came again, this time with a small child. They sat on the steps of the house across the street. The child pointed at the light. Thomas could imagine the question, why is that light always on? A few days later, there was a knock at the door. Thomas opened it slowly. The woman stood there, smiling politely. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said. "My name is Rachel. We just moved in." Thomas smiled. "No disturbance at all." She hesitated, then said, "My son asked why your light is always on. I didn't know the answer, but I told him it meant someone was home." Thomas felt something warm settle in his chest. After Rachel left, Thomas sat alone in his chair. He thought about Eleanor, about her words. Someone might need to see it. From that night on, the light meant more. It meant safety. It meant presence. It meant that even in a quiet world, someone was awake. Someone cared. Seasons passed. Winter snow softened the street. Spring returned color. Summer brought laughter. And the light never failed. Neighbors came to recognize it. Teenagers walking home late felt reassured by it. A delivery driver once paused and smiled at it. The light asked for nothing. It simply was. Thomas understood something many people only learn with age. You don't need to be loud to matter. You don't need to be fast to be relevant. You don't need to be new to be important. Sometimes, just being steady is enough. One night, Thomas felt unusually tired. Not unwell, just ready. He turned on the lamp, sat in his chair, and closed his eyes. The light shone on. The next morning, neighbors noticed the light still glowing. Rachel crossed the street. She knocked gently. There was no answer. The house grew quiet. But the story didn't end. Weeks later, Rachel moved a lamp into her own front window. She turned it on at dusk. Her son asked why. She smiled and said, "Because someone might need to see it." And so, on Maple Street, 2 lights now glowed. A reminder that even as years pass, even as lives change, kindness continues.